members of the committee. My name is Dr. Alexey, and today I'm pleased to present my master thesis titled World Social Capital, Government Connections and Performance of Chinese Public Companies. The work was supervised by Associate Professor Yulia Borisovna, to whom I'm very grateful, and let me walk you through the motivations, the methodology, and the main findings of my research. And I want to start with the relevance of the study, and I want to give you the definition of the word social capital. This is a network of directors' relationships based on trust and strong ties that can give resource, money, and other benefits for company. And in China, the government remains the main actor in the economy. It regulates markets, it sets industry's priorities, and in this environment, the role of social capital can be extremely useful, but yet this role remains relatively understudied. So this brings me to the research gap and the research question. A lot of articles assume that government connections give benefits for companies, but the real evidence is mixed. So the research question is as follows. Are government-connected directors associated with better financial and strategic performance of Chinese listed companies? And on the slide you can see 5 objectives, and the goal of my research is to examine the relationship between government-connected board members and the financial and strategic performance of Chinese listed companies. So the object is Chinese public companies, the subject is the relationship between board social capital and firm performance, and methodologically my paper has 2 parts, the theoretical part and the empirical part. And a few words about Chinese specific of the board of directors. China has party committees, and boards works alongside the party committee. And second, business runs on personal connections, trust, and reputation, and it based on the Guanxi culture. I explain what it means in a few moments. And as for theoretical framework, social capital, followed by Bourdieu, Coleman, and Lin, is resources that can be obtained through stable networks and relationships. And about Guanxi, following by Fei Xiaopeng, this is not just only networks or relationships. This is a system where people can create debt. When somebody helps somebody, it creates debt. But if somebody doesn't help in China, it can spoil all connections and reputations. And this is extremely important. And a few words about previous research conclusions. On the slide you can see researchers and conclusions. So I want to pay attention on research by Yu, Su, and Shi in 2025. So in China, board ties to government bring favorable regulatory treatment, contracts, and protection. Interesting conclusion. So, in my paper I have 6 hypotheses, and each hypothesis has theoretical background. For example, hypothesis about financial performance based on social capital theory followed by Bourdieu, Coleman, and co-authors. Or, for example, hypothesis about innovation activity and internalization based on institutional theory. And now let's talk about my hypothesis. I have 6 hypotheses. You can see the common template on the slide. So, the number or presence of government-connected directors is positively related to. And for hypothesis 1, financial performance. Hypothesis 2, higher innovation activity. Hypothesis 3, greater presence in international markets. Hypothesis 4, higher financial leverage. Hypothesis 5, higher market value. And the last but not least, hypothesis 6, fewer financial constraints. And a few words about my data and sample. The data were collected by myself from different sources like Bing, Edgar, company reports, company markets, and other sources. So the data have the largest Chinese public companies. You can see on the slide sample composition by sector. But in my sample, Chinese public companies without financial sector. So the data have 313 public companies, 939 observations, and they are final data for 3 years from 2022 to 2024. And on the slide you can see the general model. In my research, I used panel regression with fixed and random effects models. So chosen by the Hausman test for each dependent variable, and robust standard errors clustered by company. And in my research I have two proxies, binary and account. And all data estimated in the program RStudio and prepared in Excel. So, a few words about variables. On the slide you can see my variables. I have three types of variables: dependent, independent, the most important, and control variables. And for example, variables return of equity, return of assets, price to earnings, they are linked to hypothesis 1. Or for example, investment intensity variable is linked to hypothesis 2. And about controls variables, term H, liquidity, independent directors, and board H. And now let's talk about independent variables. But first of all, I want to explain what counts as a Garmin connection. So, a director is Garmin connected if they have at least one of several factors. For example, he or she is Garmin employment or has worked in Garmin during the last 5 years, or has membership in Garmin committees, or has honorary titles, or works in important Garmin projects, or maybe has family ties to Garmin or political figures. And now let's talk about independent variables. For example, the variable n connection members is number of such directors on the board. Or the variable dummy taxon is a binary variable and is equal to 1 if at least one such director works in Garmin. And on the slide you can see descriptive statistic. Just want to pay your attention. The variable Garmin type dummy mean is equal to 57%. This means that 57% of companies in my sample has at least one director who connected with Garmin. Just interesting. And now let's talk about my results. So, unfortunately, finance performance, no significant effects. So, models for return of equity, return of assets, innovation, dominance Q, cash ratio are statistically weak. But adjusted R-square is near 0 or negative. It's 2. So, hypotheses 1, 2, 5, and 6 are not confirmed. But, there are regression results for this hypothesis, so models are statistically weak. But I have two robust findings. So, if you remember, hypothesis 3 predicted that board members' Garmin ties positively influence a firm's presence in international markets. So, hypothesis 3 is rejected. The relationship is significant, but runs in the opposite direction. And you can see the variable shows minus 0.076. And this means that firms with Garmin connected directors earn a smaller share of revenue abroad. Interesting. And a few words about financial leverage. So, hypothesis 4 predicted a positive relationship between the number of presence of Garmin connected director and firm's financial leverage. So, hypothesis 4 is partially controlled. A weak, small, and non-robust positive signal. Because the model weak and has plus 0.016. And we can say that having more connected directors leads to slightly easier debt assets, but too big to rely on. And I forget to say that I have second finding about firm size. That Garmin ties go with larger firms. Interesting result. And on this slide you can see again regression results for each model, so for the market, leverage, and firm size, and statistically weak models, dominance Q and cash ratio. And the summary for each hypothesis. So again, hypothesis 3 is rejected, hypothesis 4 partially confirmed, and additional hypothesis about firm size has positive association. And a few words about scientific contribution and novelty. So my thesis separates financial and non-financial effects. Second, maybe yes, I don't have results and no effect on profitability, but I can say that there is result too, because maybe you remember at the beginning of the presentation, I told that a lot of articles assume that connections with government give benefits for companies. But if you take my results about return on equity, return on assets, we can argue with this assumption. And the third findings about internalization. And my data original, available, can be checked, and it's a reusable data for future research. And as for practical recommendations for companies who want to expand on foreign markets, I can advise balanced government-connected directors with international expertise. For example, for companies who want to expand national markets, of course I can advise to attract more directors that connected with government. And third, separate the role, just connect directors as regulatory license and international experience manager for operations. And just a big recommendation about financing, according to hypothesis 4, ties may slightly easy access to bank credit, but just treat it as a bonus, not like main strategy. And for research, I can advise to separate the financial and strategic effect of political ties. And for policymaker, if state wishes to conduct export policy, it should take into account the interests of national companies with state-linked laws.